was my voice, whispering the lines from the last story I had recorded, but it was wrong, twisted. The pitch was off lower, slower, as if time itself had degraded it. Every word was stretched, drenched in reverb. Beneath my voice, layered like static, was the whisper again, not me. The same parasitic murmur from before, but now I could understand a few words. Still, here, voice, feeds. I dropped the headphones, heart pounding. They clattered onto the desk, the sound unnaturally loud in the dead silence. My ears rang. The humming stopped. The room fell into the kind of stillness that doesn't belong in the living. Then the lights flickered, just once, but long enough for the dark to feel like a hand brushing over my skin, long enough for me to see the outline of something in the hallway. Mirror, something not me. No details, just a silhouette, tall, head slightly tilted, as if listening. By the time I turned, it was gone, but a chill followed, deep and immediate, the kind that wraps your bones in ice. I backed away. My foot nudged the headphones again, and this time, they emitted a single click, then another rhythmic, measured like something was trying to speak in code. I unplugged everything, every cable, every wire, every input. My heart hammered, so hard I could hear it in my ears. But the sound, the clicking continued, and I realized something then. It wasn't coming from the equipment anymore. It was coming from inside the walls. The exact phrase that had been inserted into my script days earlier. That was when I understood. This wasn't an error, or my imagination, or even a haunting. It was a response. Something had heard me through the mic, and now it was speaking back. But it didn't use words. It used me. The presence without a face for the next 2 days. I didn't record. I barely touched the computer. The equipment sat untouched on my desk like a dormant relic of something that had once felt harmless. But it wasn't just the setup that unnerved me now. It was the air around it. The very space felt tuned, like it was still listening, even when everything was off. I tried sleeping with the bedroom door closed. I covered the mirrors. I even placed the microphone inside a drawer, wrapped in cloth, and buried beneath random objects, as if that would muffle whatever connection had been formed. But it didn't help. The disturbances didn't stop. They just changed. Instead of noise, I began noticing movement. Not overt, nothing dramatic, but little things. Items on shelves would shift slightly. A coaster moved from the left side of my coffee table to the right. A framed photo on my nightstand tilted forward, as though nudged from behind. The worst was my journal. I kept one, tucked away in a drawer. Thoughts, ideas, dream fragments. I hadn't written in it since the recording incident. One morning, I found it open on the kitchen counter. A page I hadn't written on had a single sentence scrawled in faint pencil. "Your voice brought me here." I stared at the words for a long time. They weren't in my handwriting. I never left the journal in the kitchen, and yet there it was, placed purposefully, as though shown to me. That same morning, while brushing my teeth, I felt it, the sensation of being watched. It wasn't imagination. It was visceral, so intense I could pinpoint the direction of the gaze. Behind me, upper right, from the corner of the ceiling above the bathroom mirror. I turned quickly, heart spiking, but there was nothing there. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I opened the medicine cabinet, revealing the mirror behind it and froze. My reflection stared back, but it didn't move when I did. For half a second, maybe less, my image lagged behind. My body turned, my hand raised, but the mirror held still, as if confused about what it was supposed to mimic. Then, like catching up from a delay, the reflection snapped back into place. I stumbled back, knocking over the cup on the sink. Water splashed. My reflection blinked, normal again, but I knew what I saw. Later that night, I took a picture of my recording setup. Part of me wanted to document everything, to prove to myself that this wasn't just mental decay. But when I reviewed the image on my phone, something made my skin crawl. In the picture, just above the chair at the desk, The shadow on the wall had a shape, not an object, not a trick of light. It was a silhouette, tall, narrow, and wrong. Number. Face. No features, just a head, a sloping neck, and arms that didn't quite match human proportions. It blended with the darkness, but it was there like a stain that hadn't been before. I checked the wall, clean, blank, but the picture hadn't lied. That night, I heard the whisper again, not through the headphones. From the walls, it was fainter. Now, more distant. Like it wasn't speaking to me directly, but about me. A private conversation I wasn't meant to hear. He heard it, ... He called us. He gave us his voice. The words filtered through, like smoke sliding between the cracks in reality. I pressed my ear to the wall. There was no source, no room on the other side. Just insulation and the emptiness of drywall. But the voice continued, soft and intimate. He doesn't know. He opened it. Opened what? I don't know when I backed away. I don't remember crawling back into bed, but I lay there until the whisper stopped. Even then, the silence didn't feel like relief. It felt like something was waiting, not to enter, but to be noticed. A presence, without a face, anchored to me by the one thing I could never take back. My voice. The unspoken warning by the fifth night. I stopped trying to rationalize what was happening. Sleep had become a ritual of resistance, spent lying still, breath shallow, waiting for the next shift in the air, the next brush of presence, just out of sight. It no longer felt like my apartment. It felt like a stage. And I was no longer the narrator, was the character. And the audience was always watching. I left my equipment untouched. Yet every morning, when I checked the desktop, there was a new file, unnamed, blank icon. No timestamp. They were always audio files, always the same length. 2 minutes, 47 seconds. And always, when I pressed play, there was silence for the first few seconds. Then my voice, but I hadn't recorded anything in each file. I spoke lines I had never written. My tone was calm, slow, hypnotic. Like I was reading from a script that didn't exist. The words chilled me more than any scream could. There's a sound beneath the silence, and once you hear it, it hears you too. In one of the recordings, my voice faltered midway through. Not from fear, from resistance. It was as if I was trying not to say the words, and yet they still came out, smooth and unbroken. As though I'd been dubbed over by something else entirely. Now, I'd stopped opening the files, but they kept appearing. Sometimes I'd find them midday. Other times they'd appear while I was in the room, back turned, only to look and see a new one sitting there, untouched. I deleted them. They reappeared. I unplugged the router. They still came, as if whatever was generating them wasn't using the internet. It was using me. The last time I tried deleting one, the screen glitched, just for a second. But enough. A flash, an image, a face, or something like it, distorted, pale, with no eyes. Its mouth was wide, frozen in a silent scream. It stared directly into the screen, as though pressed to the other side of the glass. Waiting to be let through, I yanked the power cord out, sat in silence. But something felt wrong with the silence too, like it wasn't empty, like the quiet was layered, as if hiding something beneath it. So I recorded one final file. I hit record, placed the microphone on the desk, and walked away. Sat on the floor in the corner of the room with my eyes closed. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just let it run. 2 minutes. 5, 10. When I stopped it, I almost didn't check, but curiosity always wins, doesn't it? I played it back. The first few minutes were empty. Low hiss, ambient room noise. Then, suddenly, without warning, my voice began speaking, clearly, confidently. Except I hadn't said a word. You brought me shape, it said. You fed me silence. You gave me breath. My chest tightened. The voice was mine, but it wasn't me. It felt inhabited, like my vocal cords had been hijacked, twisted into some alien cadence. The phrasing, the rhythm, it was like listening to someone impersonating me through a broken filter. And then came the warning. Others will hear this, and if they listen long enough, I will hear them too. I slammed the player shut, heart pounding. For a long moment, the room felt smaller, crushing, like the air itself was being pulled inward. I looked toward the window. The glass reflected not just me, but something behind me, standing silently in the corner where I'd been moments before. As I turned, nothing was there, but the shadow in the reflection stayed. It didn't move. It didn't blink. It just watched. A warning, unspoken, but clear. I wasn't the only voice anymore. The moment of truth. I spent the following day walking in circles around my apartment, unable to rest, unable to leave. There was a feeling in the air, not fear exactly, not anymore. It had evolved into something quieter and more persuasive. Like a whisper too low to hear, but too deep to ignore. Like gravity, pulling my thoughts toward one inevitable conclusion. This wasn't going to go away on its own, and more terrifying than the presence itself was the certainty that I had invited it. Somehow, in speaking aloud, stories meant to haunt others, I had opened something, or been opened myself. A subtle invitation, wrapped in narrative, and echoed back to me by the thing that now shared my voice. She'll listen closely. When darkness wraps the world and dreams begin to stir, you've arrived at the right place. Welcome to Between Dreams and Shadows, the sanctuary of stories that live between sleep and the unknown. Here every tale is more than a story. It's a portal to hidden worlds, forgotten secrets, whispers from beyond, and shadows that speak as your eyes begin to close. If you're drawn to mysteries, haunting legends, and stories that send shivers down your spine, this channel is your new nighttime ritual. Before we begin, I invite you to become part of this growing nightbound community. Subscribe now, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale. New stories drop regularly, always under the veil of night. Like this video if you enjoy that chill before sleep. It helps this channel grow, and lets me bring you deeper, darker stories. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a strange dream, or felt something watching in the dark? Your experience might inspire the next tale now. Take a deep breath, turn off the lights, leave the world behind, and get ready to drift between dreams and shadows, setting the atmosphere. The first time I noticed it, I was alone in my apartment, recording voiceovers for a short horror narration I'd written. The room was dimly lit, just the amber glow of my desk lamp casting a soft halo on the microphone's mesh grill. Outside, the city had long since gone to sleep, its breath a quiet hum of distant traffic and wind threading between buildings, like a whisper, looking for someone to hear it. I've always loved recording at night. There's a stillness to it that wraps around the voice, letting each word carry a kind of quiet power. But lately, that stillness had felt heavier, not the soothing kind, but dense, like the air itself was listening too closely. My name is Elliot, and I've been telling stories on my channel for 3 years now. Paranormal tales, twisted mysteries, psychological riddles that leave you awake long after the video ends. It's all fiction, or so I believed, until the night my own voice started to sound unfamiliar. I was halfway through recording a news story, a particularly unnerving script about a man who hears breathing through a landline phone that shouldn't be connected. As I read the words, something subtle began to shift, not in the room, but in me. I tripped over the same sentence twice. My tongue felt heavy. My own voice came back to me in the headphones with a strange undertone, as though someone else was mouthing the words alongside me. Half a breath behind, I paused the recording, exhaled, and restarted the line. Again, that strange sensation returned. The voice was mine, but with something wrapped inside it, a shadow, a delay too small to register as an echo, but too wrong to ignore. I chalked it up to fatigue. Maybe I was just tired, Or maybe the new audio plugin I'd installed was glitching. I marked the spot in the recording to check later, and continued. But even as I forced myself to finish the script, I felt it growing, the unease. A presence just outside of conscious perception. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up when I said the final line. The story ended with a whisper, and then the voice on the phone said my name. The moment I stopped speaking, silence reclaimed the room, but it didn't feel empty. It felt suspended, like someone or something was holding its breath, waiting. I sat frozen for a moment. No sound, no creak of floorboards, but a chill bloomed deep in my chest, the kind that comes not from cold, but from knowing you're not really alone, out of habit. I played the recording back from the beginning. That's when I heard it. Beneath my narration, at almost imperceptible volume, another voice was layered, garbled, unclear, but it wasn't mine, not an echo, not an artifact. It was whispering something beneath my words, threading through them like a parasite in silk. I leaned closer to the screen, pulse quickening. I boosted the gain. The voice became clearer, but the words didn't. They weren't in English. Or maybe they were just wrong, warped. It felt like the audio was aware of me listening, and in that moment, one thought rooted itself in my mind. So firmly it refused to be shaken. Something is hiding behind my voice in this story. The first signs of disturbance. Sigh. Didn't sleep that night. The recording lingered in my ears, even after I closed the editing software. I turned off the computer, unplugged the microphone, and backed away from my desk like it had become something. Alive something? I had to be careful not to provoke. At first I told myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was auditory pareidolia, my brain finding patterns in noise, like seeing faces in clouds. But the logic didn't stick. Not when I replayed the raw file the next morning, in daylight, and still heard it. The whisper, layered under my voice like a second heartbeat. I tried isolating the frequencies. Nothing helped. No matter what I did, the whisper remained buried, but present, as though it wanted to be there. Worse still, when I exported the audio, the voice sounded slightly louder in the final file than it had in the raw version. Almost like it had followed me into the render. That was the first time something shifted in my apartment. It was small, so small I might have missed it, had I not been staring at the exact spot where it happened. A pen rolled off the edge of my desk. Not dropped, not nudged. It rolled, slowly, with purpose, as if nudged by an invisible fingertip. I stood frozen. The room was perfectly still. No wind, no tremor, no vibration. Just the pen, now resting on the floor, an inch from my foot. I picked it up, heart thudding. A prank, a draft. I looked toward the window closed. The vents weren't on. The air was utterly still. Later that day, I found the story I'd written, the script I'd narrated the night before, lightly altered. At first, I thought it was my mistake, but one line in particular stood out, and then, the voice on the phone said my name. Now read. And then, the voice from inside the walls said my name. I hadn't written that. I was certain. My original version used the phone as the central motif. I checked the file's metadata, no edits, no timestamp change. As if it had always said the walls. I didn't know what disturbed me more, the change, or the possibility that it had been that way all along, and I'd somehow remembered it differently. That night, I tried recording again another story, something unrelated, a simple tale about a haunted painting. I wanted to shake off the previous night's unease and move on, but the microphone wouldn't turn on. It worked the day before. It lit up when plugged in, a small blue LED that glowed comfortingly in the dark. But now, nothing. No light, no input. Dead. I checked the USB port, swapped the cable, restarted the system. Still dead. Frustrated, I leaned in to unplug it, and that's when I saw it. For a split second, reflected in the black glass of the powered-off screen, something moved behind me. It wasn't clear. A shadow, just a little darker Then the room. It moved fast, low to the floor. By the time I turned around, there was nothing. But the chair behind me was ever so slightly turned, like someone had been sitting in it, watching me. The shadows in my apartment seemed deeper now, corners stretched, longer than they should. Light bulbs dimmed for no reason, and my reflection, when I caught it in mirrors, wasn't wrong, but it felt delayed. Like it needed a moment to remember how to be me. I stopped recording. I told myself I'd take a break, maybe a few days off, let my mind reset. But even as I stepped away from the equipment, I couldn't escape the sense that the story I told that night had become something else, something that didn't want to be forgotten. And as I lay in bed, eyes open to the ceiling, I began to hear faint clicks from the living room, like someone gently tapping the microphone, waiting. The sound that shouldn't exist. Tho woke at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of breathing. Not mine. Not the shallow rhythm of sleep, nor the startled gasps of a nightmare. This was close, low, and deliberate, coming from just beyond the door to my bedroom. I didn't move at first. I just lay there, frozen beneath the covers, heart drumming painfully in my chest as I strained to listen. The breath was wet, slow, like someone exhaling through a partially open mouth. It didn't pace like a human. It lingered in a rhythm that felt observant. For a brief moment, I questioned everything. Maybe it was the pipes, the air conditioning, a neighbor. But my apartment was small. One bedroom, second floor. The kind of place where you learn to distinguish every click, creak, and mechanical hum. This wasn't any of them. Then it stopped, and from the silence came something worse, a soft hum, distant and muffled, like someone singing through a wall. At first, I couldn't place the tune, but it was familiar. A low, almost mechanical melody, not like a person humming, but like a distorted playback, slowed and fractured. I sat up slowly, the mattress groaning beneath me. The hum continued. It came not from outside, but from within the apartment. And the more I listened, the more I realized it was coming from my desk setup, the computer, except it was turned off. I walked carefully through the dark, passing the hall where the breathing had been. Every shadow seemed heavier now, as if the air itself had thickened. My skin prickled. A sensation of being watched clung to my back with invisible fingers. When I reached the desk, I stared at the black screen of my monitor. Still off. The microphone still. Dead. But the hum continued. Faint. Almost imperceptible. It was coming from the headphones, still plugged into the interface. I lifted them, slowly pressing the padded cups to my ears, and what I heard chilled me to my marrow. The question was no longer what it was, but why it had chosen me. I stood in front of the recording setup again. I hadn't touched it in days. It looked innocent, enough, just a microphone, a pop filter, the black expanse of a blank monitor. But standing there, I could feel it. The attention, like the moment before someone breathes down your neck. Not wind, just awareness. I had two choices. Shut it all down, destroy the equipment, abandon the apartment, and try to outrun something I couldn't see. Or ask it a question, not to provoke, but to understand. I sat down, slowly, carefully. The chair felt cold, even after days of disuse. I turned on the mic. Nothing happened. No voices, no shadows. Just the normal boot-up hum, and the blinking red light, waiting to record. I clicked the button. "You've used my voice," I said. My own words sounded hollow in the quiet. "You've spoken through me. You've answered without being asked. So now I'm asking, what are you?" I waited. Nothing. Just the faint hiss of empty air. Then, the mic clicked. A soft distortion bloomed through the headphones, like a sigh warped through static. And then my voice came back to me, but reversed. Not like a playback feature. Like the words were unspoken, traveling backward in time and meaning. I recorded again. "Why me?" Silence. Then a whisper. One I couldn't hear with my ears, but could feel behind my eyes. It didn't answer the question. It offered a statement. You are the one who listens between the breaths. You are the one who speaks with open doors. You shaped me. I swallowed, throat dry. My pulse thudded like a clock counting down. I asked one more thing. What do you want? The lights dimmed, not flickered. Dimmed like someone turned down the room itself. And the voice answered, not aloud, not through the mic, inside me. To be heard, through others, through you. The realization dawned slowly, horribly. It wasn't content to haunt my recordings. It wanted to live in them. It wanted to be transmitted. Not to possess, but to be remembered. To etch itself into the minds of those who listened, like a melody you can't unhear. The stories were no longer mine. They were its. The more I spoke, the more I recorded, the more I unknowingly spread whatever it was, an echo, a presence, a thing made not of flesh but of resonance. The door hadn't opened from the outside. I had narrated it open, and now? It waited for me to speak again, to invite someone new to hear, to wonder, to let it in. The inevitability of darkness I thought about running. Truly, I did. There was a window, a moment between knowing and believing where I could have packed a bag, smashed the equipment, and left the apartment behind forever. But I didn't move, not because I was paralyzed with fear, but because a deeper truth had taken root. Leaving wouldn't matter. The thing wasn't confined to this room, this gear, or even my voice. It was tethered now, woven into the frequency of my thoughts, lingering in the spaces between syllables. It had embedded itself in the story, and the story had already been told. Not to anyone yet, but soon. That's when I realized the true horror wasn't in the haunting, it was in the inevitability. This wasn't a curse that punished, recklessness, or a ghost that needed peace. It was something older, more abstract. It didn't want revenge. It wanted to be known. It lived through attention, not blood. It thrived on exposure, on being remembered, and I had already started giving it that. Each time I played back the recordings, each time I re-listened, trying to find clues, each time I stared into the monitor and wondered, I was feeding it. The silence between words, that's where it was hiding now. That night, I had a dream, but not a dream, really. More like a relay, a handoff between sleep and something deeper. A cavern of velvet dark air, endless and soundless, where the only light came from the shape of my own body, floating mid-thought, and in front of me stood a mirror, not glass, reflection made from sound. I saw myself, but not my face, where my mouth should have been. There was a second microphone. My voice came through it, calm, cold, slow. It's too late to silence what's been heard. Then the reflection smiled, as slow, crooked, human mimicry of a smile, and opened its mouth. From the void of its throat, I heard my own stories, all at once, echoing, layered, distorted. Stories I hadn't even told yet. Stories it wanted me to create. Stories it was already writing through me. I awoke choking, not from fear, but from words, a sentence lodged in my throat, like something swallowed that never should have been consumed. I rushed to the bathroom, tried to speak. Nothing came out, just a low hum, and in the mirror, my mouth moved. Before I did. Not delayed, ahead of me, anticipating, guiding. I don't know how long I stared at myself, but eventually I understood. I'd passed the threshold. There would be no reversal, no purification, no exorcism, only expression. Whatever it was, whatever intelligence, had rooted itself inside this story. This voice, this space, it had reached the point of no return. And now, the only thing left was the transmission. I returned to my desk. I turned on the mic, and I began to narrate again. Not from memory, not from imagination, but from something just beneath the surface, whispering what comes next. Because darkness, I realized, doesn't fall all at once. It seeps in, word by word, line by line, and you don't notice it until it's already inside you. The fear that stays at S. Quiet now. Too quiet. But not the comforting kind of silence, the kind that invites sleep or peace. No, this silence is thick, charged. It hums faintly, just under the threshold of hearing, like a hidden frequency only the body can feel. I haven't left the apartment in days. Not out of fear, not anymore. Fear is a luxury I no longer own. What I feel now is inevitability. A calm surrender to something that doesn't require permission. Something that was already here before I noticed it, and will remain long after I'm gone. The microphone stays on, always, even when I don't press record. It listens. I've stopped checking the files. They appear on their own, like dreams you don't remember having until someone else describes them to you, and sometimes only. Sometimes I find files with other voices. Not mine, not human, mimics, layers of murmurs beneath the surface, weaving around my speech like parasites nesting in warmth. They whisper in patterns, too exact to be random, yet too alien to understand. I uploaded one of them, just one dot, just to see what would happen, and the messages started coming. This gave me chills. It felt like something was watching me after. I listened. Is there another part? I swear I heard someone say my name. That was when I understood what it had meant. Through others. Through you. It was never just about haunting me. I was the vessel, a narrator, a carrier. But you're the next step. Because now you've heard it too. And maybe you think this is just a story, a well-produced, eerie bedtime tale with a twist. But somewhere, between the pauses in my voice, in the quiet that surrounds these words, something else has nested. You may not feel it now, but you'll hear it later in your home, maybe. Late at night, when everything else is off. When the room is still, and the shadows don't move quite right. Maybe. It starts with a whisper that sounds like your own breath. Or a reflection that smiles before you do. Or an audio file on your desktop you don't remember downloading. And then you'll ask yourself, is this just a memory of a story? Or is it remembering me? That's when it begins. Not with fear, with curiosity. And once it's in, it doesn't leave. Because fear doesn't always chase you. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it sits in the silence, listening, long after the voice has stopped. And sometimes it sounds like you. Could you sleep after hearing this? What do you think really happened? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and, if you dare, explore another tale before bed. There's always more to hear, especially in the quiet.